Here.
Ms. Sheridan? Here. Mr. Reynolds?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Witness?
Here.
Mrs. Boza?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. McGovern?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Here.
Okay, our first order of business tonight is oath of office.
I ask the folks that have their oaths with them just to step down and take our oath down here. State your name and your oath section. You raise your right hand, please. I
I, Brian McGovern,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established in the United States and in the state,
and to the government established in the United States and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully,
and I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly perform all the duties of
impartially, and justly perform all the duties of a member of the planning board.
Member of the planning board.
Member of the planning board.
the term expiring on
With a term expiring on December 31st, 2015.
Term expiring on December 31st, 2018.
December 31st, 2015.
to the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Welcome. May I ask you to hold your oath, sign the same? Thank you.
Our next order of business is nomination for chair, vice chair. Vote on the nomination of chair over you.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll seek nominations for the chair of the planning board.
I nominate everyone. I'll second.
Any other nominations? We'll close the nominations. Ask for a vote. And Mrs. Chairman?
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mrs. Boza?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Another nomination?
Okay, at this point, we're going to open up nominations for vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate you, Sheriff. You don't get one. I'll second it.
Anyone else? Close nominations. April, call the board.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
Yeah.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mrs. Boza?
Yes.
Mr. Burke? Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Nominate for
Thank you, everyone. All right, next is the approval of minutes. We'll have an opportunity to review the minutes from our last regular planning board meeting that took place on December 15th. A motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
abstain.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mrs. Boza?
Abstain.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern?
I half abstain. I was only there for the first.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you have to make it full abstention.
Okay, full abstention.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Okay, next is memorialization of resolutions. Is there a motion to waive the reading and at the same time approve the resolution that appoints Douglas Kovats as the Belmar Planning Board Attorney for the 2015 year?
So
I'll second.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mr. Boza?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second. Is there a motion to waive the reading and at the same time approve the resolution that establishes the planning board meeting notice criteria in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act?
Robert.
Second.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Ms. Sheridan?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Witness?
Yes.
Mr. Boza?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Third, is there a motion to waive the reading and at the same time approve the resolution that grants approval to Down to Earth Farms LLC at 318 Sixth Avenue for a minor subdivision?
Yes.
Mr. McGovern?
Abstain.
Mr. Hubble?
Yes.
And the last one, is there a motion to waive the reading, and at the same time, approve the resolution that grants approval to Michael Nixon at 200 First Avenue for the minor subdivision?
Offer.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Meyer?
No.
Ms. Sherman? Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Cosar?
Abstain.
Mr. Burks?
No.
Mr. McGovern?
Yes.
Mr. Hubble?
Yes.
Okay. We only have one application tonight, and that is of Chefs International seeking amended preliminary and final site plan approval for a new marine building off 10th Avenue. Gentlemen?
The applicant, and anyone that's going to testify, if you step forward, I'll just swear you all at this point in time. Sort of move this along. You don't have to bring it here, just your person, but the council certainly. Just the folks that are here to testify. If you think you're going to testify, I'll swear you at this point in time. Okay? Raise your right hand. I'm just going to swear this one, you get the word approved.
I do.
Yes, yes, okay. Just before you testify, because I'm sure you'll be doing that, if you would just state your name, spell your last name to the record, that way we know who you are before you. I just have some things, if I want, can I mark the exhibits into our? Yep. Thank you. We have a TDRC report. I think you've gotten a copy of that. That's December 29th. We marked that PD1. We have our engineer's report, 7-page report PD2. That's January 9th, 2015. A1 is the architectural drawings consisting of a floor plan that we December 23rd, 14. That's A1. Second sheet of the architectural drawings marked that A2. Those show the elevations. And December 23rd, 2014. A3 is the application, I'm sorry, excuse me, no, is the stormwater management report revised to December 2014. A4 is the landscape plan, Bauer, December 23rd, 2014. A5 is the application. Dynamic engineering plans revised to December 15, 2014, consisting of 12 sheets. The index sheet identifies as cover sheet, aerial map, demolition plan, site plan, grading plan, drainage and utility plan, sanitary sewer plan, profiles, lighting plan, soil erosion, sediment control, construction details, 3 pages, landscaping plan, 2, only construction details. 12 sheets that will be marked as one exhibit as A6. Is there any other exhibits? Maybe all of you did have mark those.
You could.
Okay. Up to A6. A6 is the dynamic engineering mark one exhibit, 12 sheets. Okay. So
That's
that
a color
color versions of documents that we all have.
there's the area which is actually in site plan package.
Okay, so it's colorized, so we'll mark that as A7 area.
Yeah, I guess we should.
And,
Aerial would be, I marked this one.
okay,
We're gonna do that landscape one here.
A8 would be the aerial exhibit overlay, which has the proposed layout on the area.
Okay.
That's a B.
8, 9,
Is the site plan record.
site rendering. A10.
Survey, I think that was submitted as part of that.
Survey. Okay. Very good.
We have 4 perspective renderings of the outdoor decking.
The first one is A11. No mark this. A11. A12 is,
There are 4 exterior perspective renderings.
okay, we'll mark all of them as A11, 1 through 4.
Just make it a one.
Oh, right, very good. We will not do it that way then.
Okay, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's empty now.
That's right. Okay. Very good.
And then 15 is just a rendered landscape plan.
Very good. All right.
Good, thanks.
Well, that's all exhibits, council.
That's not it.
Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry.
my name is Mark Kittrick, with the law firm King Kittrick Jackson Sweeney. Here representing Chefs International. Thank you for hearing us this evening. We're here for amended preliminary and final site plan approval. As the board is aware, this property is located in the public use overlay zone district and is subject to the Seaport redevelopment program and redevelopment plan. The application before you this evening doesn't require any variances as proposed. As we also well know, this was received preliminary and final site plan approval in March of 2014. This is an amended plan before you tonight, which envisions a restaurant which has one floor restaurant, 10,272 square feet, along with outdoor parking. And as you'll see, based on the exhibits that are being presented and the testimony that will be presented, there's additional outdoor seating which will be made available. There'll be retail space as envisioned before of 1,992 square feet. It's our position that the proposed restaurant and retail space is consistent with the vision of the borough for the future redevelopment of this marina, and my client's existing partnership with the borough, as evidenced by what has very successfully occurred with regards to Pier 9, has been a successful partnership for all parties concerned, and we believe the proposed restaurant and the retail space will provide another opportunity for the borough to enhance the jewel that is the Belmar Marina. Now, as part of the redevelopment process, we were before the mayor and council. That is part of the process that we go through before we come to the planning board, and the proposal was received with unanimous approval. So we hope it is equally well received by this planning board, and will view the project in the same favorable light. That being said, we have a number of witnesses that would like to call this evening to provide you with information regarding this exciting project and answer any questions that you may have. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call our architect, Mr. Greg Simon.
My name is Greg Sonnenfeld, S-O-N-N-E-N-F-E-L-D. What I forgot to do before was to give this brief reference.
These additional documents, or these are just?
These documents were submitted.
Okay, so they're just on the board? This elevation? Okay. So we just do this over March. I think we're up to 16, 16, first floor. On board. We call it the elevations. Correct?
Yes.
17.
just your name and your occupation,
Greg Santel, architect.
and you've appeared before this board and
Yes, I
various
have.
boards in New Jersey? And how long have you been on that?
We don't need your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Okay, as everybody's aware, the building has been redesigned, and one of the main driving forces of this was the fact that our previous building required relocation of all the site utilities. We're familiar with the utilities at the site, the electric, they're coming from every direction. The first go-around, we disregarded that. We blocked the building on there, we got it as large as we could. That wasn't really a good thing because we had to shut the marina down. So what we tried to do here was to reduce the size of the building footprint. We reduced it to a single-story building, and we avoided moving probably 95% of the utilities. The way we did that was to utilize the locations and then kind of carve our building out to leave the transformers there. We had some transformers up, to orient you on this page here, this is Route 35 side, and this is the water side. So there's a few transformers up here. There are also switchgear transformers in this area here. So what we've done is we've kind of carved the building out. The other thing we did was because of because the flood zone where that line fell, and John will be able to explain a little bit better than I can, we moved the building out of that zone as well. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why the building steps a little bit here, because that line sort of meanders around that way. So by avoiding that line, we got to drop the building down a little bit lower. And what that did, that eliminated the very long ramps and the number of steps to get up to grade, to finished floor. The building is completely accessible from many different points. There's a ramp on this side of the building here that brings us up to the retail area. The scope, the elements that were in the first design are still here. We have a retail space, we have a boater's office, we have the marina office, and then we have the public restrooms. And what we did here is we flipped the restrooms and the public portion of the building closer to the pier and closer to the boats. So we thought that that worked a lot better than what we had before, where it was on the opposite side, so everybody coming to use the pier, use the boats, really had to get to the far side of the building. So we have access here. We have steps and ramps from the front area up. We have a drop-off over here, which John will explain a little bit better. Our main entrance now is on this side, flipped across. We have a series of steps getting up, and we have another barrier-free access to the back deck. So because the building got smaller, what we thought was a good idea was to utilize the exterior more than the interior. The last building, it was larger on the interior, we had more seating on the interior and less seating on the outside. In this case, we're pretty similar to the number of seats we had. However, the outside is used a little bit more than the inside. So as you enter the building on this side, the main dining room is over here. There's different elements. There's fireplaces. There is the structure on the inside of the building is heavy timber with metal plates, rustic, which kind of works with the design of the building. The building is designed more of a wharfside type building. Chef's has the Wharfside Restaurant in Point Pleasant, and the colors and materials match that. We went in that direction, and you'll see that in a second when we get there. So the water side is over here. The deck is a tiered deck, a lot larger, a lot more seating. a lot more things going on. We've incorporated a lot more landscaping than we did the first time as well. There's a couple bars on the outside area, and there's a lot of landscaping on the outside, different grasses and things like that.
Would you say?
Yes.
Since this has been altered, it's a more accessible building?
Much more accessible because we've come down the distance to avoid the height of the flood zones. We're still way up. Don't get me wrong, we're up high still, but we're a lot lower than we were before. The rear of the building, I was talking to you about the deck area.
And for the record, this is A11?
Yeah, 811.
And just for the record, what you're showing depicts the rear of the building, but
That's
that
correct.
doesn't
No,
necessarily reflect.
this is not the building. I should actually show you the building first, but this is just a mess. There's no detail to it. It's just really a placeholder to show you what's happening on the exterior with the decking and what have you. The building and materials, this is what the building materials look like. What we've incorporated is a cement fiber board, horizontal in some locations, vertical in others, metal roofing throughout the building, a galvanized roof type situation. There's a lot of glass looking towards the water, which is indicated along here. This is a little bit in shadow because this is a covered outdoor dining area, but this is all glass on the back. The interior of the restaurant, I told you before, we're incorporating heavy timbers, and we're sloping the roof, we're exposing the roof structure, so we're creating a volume space and allowing light to come in via these shed dormers. This building, the tallest element in this building is approximately 34 feet, 6 inches from finished floor. And that point is the entrance over here. Whereas before, the highest point was approximately 85 feet, 84 feet. So because it's a one-story building, the scale has reduced. Okay, so now when I show you these boards, the building in the background is just a shadow, just a form. We've incorporated sitting steps on the rear, which is right adjacent to the water. Sitting steps are areas where the public can sit, enjoy, without actually sitting on couches or chairs or anything like that. Here you can see the handicap ramp, which comes up. There's two areas that are segregated for sand. The ground material is sand. There's outdoor seating there. There's fire pits there as well. This is a different view.
And this is
This is A12. This is a different view of the same thing. As you can see, this paved area is the existing sidewalk. Okay, this indicates the bar that's outside that's covered by a translucent roof that allows the sun to diffuse through. There's a series of tables and umbrellas. We are planning on incorporating fabric shade structures. At some time, this is a design just indicating the umbrellas. On this side is where let me see if I can get this a little bit better. Before I discuss the utilities, so what we've done here is we've screened the utilities behind this wall over here. Okay, and with the landscaping, the switchgear, the boxes, the transformers are pretty much secluded. This would be the view from the 9th Avenue Pier. And then this is a more detailed view of one of the seating areas up on top of the deck. So as you can see, we did we created a pretty fantastic space for the outside of the building, and that's where it's going to be the most utilized space, we think, during the summer months. People really don't want to go inside to eat if they can get outside and enjoy the view and what have you. So that's why we concentrated on the exterior.
If you could go back to one of the exhibits that reflects it best, but there are doors that open up, is that correct?
Along the water side, there are glass garage doors, for lack of a better term. They're full glass, they roll up, which enables pretty much the outside to be the inside during good weather. And on the plan, you can see that they're all along this dining area here, and then they're all along this area here. So the exterior, the water side of the building is completely opened up in glass, and can be opened up to the outside as well.
And because of this change, as it relates to utility service, would it be, your opinion, this is the least disruptive?
This is absolutely the least disruptive use of the space when it comes to the relocation of the utilities, absolutely. It really forced us to kind of cut the building in a few different locations.
Is there any part of the building, either inside or outside, that's open to the public that is not accessible to people with special needs?
No. They're actually, by code, we're only required to have the two, but we have more than that. We've actually added a couple more. There's a ramp that leads you from the bulkhead, the paver walkway there, directly up to the back part of the deck. There's another ramp that brings you up to the retail and the voter's office. There's another ramp that brings you up to that side, the drop-off side of the site. And then there's another ramp from the parking lot up to the main entrance.
Now, the sitting steps
Yes.
that you have out there, are they part of the restaurant? Can people drink and eat on those steps? Or
Well, as
are
far
they
as,
outside of the restaurant?
I think that needs to be worked out. I think it could happen in both ways. The controlling element would be how chefs allows, how they control the drinking on the site, as opposed to the public utilizing those steps. So I would guess that, without speaking to chefs, I would guess that the steps would be able to be used by the public, and they'll be eating on there, but I don't think they'll be drinking on there.
Will there be a walkway so that people can get through from one side of the range to the other?
Yes, absolutely.
I saw it in the picture, it's just confusing when you're saying you go down there to drink, so I want to make sure there's access for people to walk through.
Yeah, the paver walkway remains. There's no interruption to that. Pardon me?
With no tables, no...
No tables, no nothing, correct, correct. And that you can see along this line here.
I have a question on loading zones. When you're looking at the overall map here, I don't see how you're going to negotiate tractor trailers in.
I think John would be able to answer that a lot better than I can.
The previous plan had them going around front. And the way the site is configured now to the west, it doesn't look like a vehicle can get through there either.
We'll address that for you.
Is it possible to let members of the board see the photos or the building itself?
Yes.
Closer to that.
It seems like the look has definitely changed since.
Yes.
Not that one, not that one, the color.
Color.
That's good.
There you go.
Is that your final color?
That's the proposal.
I just, if you do have a question, so the folks don't think we're having a private meeting up front, you can just raise your voice as to what your question was. I know you don't intend to do that.
John, what's this little piece over here? I guess, yes. Yeah. It's kind of,
That's the entry tower, that's the side of the entry tower.
so from,
The other side. That roof is intended to be silver colored or?
That's a galvanized steel.
They come in different colors.
Yes, they do.
This, to me, this looks rather drab compared to the original plan.
Yeah, it's totally opposite of the original plan. So the plan that was the look and feel that we approved before, that's not it at all. I mean, I understand that you had to downsize the building, but you changed the entire look of the building.
That has to be one of the responsibilities that we have, is to promote the desirable visual effect. What we were doing. It went away.
Totally.
Concerned about the Route 35 side, because that's the part that people are gonna drive past every single day, and it's a little bland, where the other three sides, there's some architectural interest to them.
Well, the Route 35 side is pretty much the back of the house.
Understood.
Right.
But that's what everyone's gonna drive past.
And it did look visually different with the other.
for benefit of the record and the public here, when it's up here showing this end of the dais picture, there was just questions about verification of the color of the building and some of and basically the same comments you heard from the other end about the design.
It's a wood color.
Just to set the
Yes,
record.
it's a weathered wood color, yes.
And there are plenty of windows, would you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Project?
Absolutely. There's quite a bit of glass.
And that was consistent with the prior.
That's correct.
If I could I ask you to go back to A12 for a second for the outdoor, for the step seating? I think it's at the bottom of your existing, or, what's that? Appears that there's a planting strip at the top where the
Yes.
umbrella is in the seats. There doesn't appear to be any communication between the steps and the interior of that facility from the rear. Is that accurate?
That is, but that is, there will be, we just haven't, there will be access from the deck to the seating steps. We haven't quite worked out the security of the site.
You mentioned in your testimony that the elevation from finished floor will be approximately 34 feet. 34.6.
Will not be.
How much height to get to the finished floor?
John can answer that one
Okay,
as well.
so
Can
from
I correct?
whatever FEMA told you, or wherever you,
Yes, we meet
and then
the
34 on
requirements.
top.
That's correct.
I'm just looking for that space there, okay.
Correct. Can I just correct myself? There will be no access and no connection between the sitting steps and the upper deck.
So really, it's, for people to get there, it really is for the public, pretty much. Okay. With regard to your first rendering, A1, on the bottom there, if you just pull that back up, to the, going to the far right of that picture, what will be the north elevation, at the water side, you have, it says a landscape area, then the bar. Then there seems to be a section that says up. Is that some type of a walkway?
That's a ramp.
That's not a handicap accessible?
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's another handicap?
That's correct.
And similarly, at the opposite end of the deck dining there's another ramp then, so that once you get to the ramp, anyone can get up also there. Okay.
That's correct.
Very good. You mentioned before the screening materials, but I don't think you described what the screening materials would be for the, I guess it's at the north elevation where the existing utilities and equipment. What type of screening is being proposed for that?
There is a framed wall, and landscape. Landscape.
What is the?
Wall would consist of what?
The wall would consist of some sort of framing material with the similar siding material applied to that.
The cement board.
Correct.
Is there a need for regular access to that utility equipment?
There is access to that, yes.
I know that there is, I see that there is. I'm just trying to figure out what type of access, what type of, is it vehicle access?
No, it's pedestrian access. So it's for somebody who has to get back there to doing service on the utility. If a transformer goes, they would probably lift a crane in there to pull it out.
Okay, so the height of that wall for the screening would be what? Approximately?
Well, the height of the wall for the screen along the water side is, I don't know exactly, it's probably close to 12 feet. Okay? But then the ramp protects the other part of the screen area.
I see. Oh, okay, so that.
Right, and you see two.
So it's
two
going to
doors
be
there.
elevated anyway to accommodate for the ramp.
Correct.
The highest point of the tower element, what I'll refer to as the tower element, that's within that 34.6, correct?
Yes.
Am I correct that the other peak of the roof does not exceed that? I'm looking at your south elevation, okay, the middle of the main structure, that's also within the 34.6? Okay, might actually, from looking at there, it looks like it's actually maybe shorter. The tower peak?
The tower peak is the highest, the tower peak is the highest point in the roof.
Okay. I don't know.
Doug, I have a question for you. Looking at this design right there, would our outdoor dining ordinance apply to that public area by the steps?
You know, that's a question that I have. If there is going to be access, I think probably it would, if you're going to have access to that. Oh, I'm sorry, you said there's not going to be.
There's not
going to be access, okay. So it's just like an outdoor picnic area, really. I don't think so.
Right.
It's not.
So in other words, they wouldn't be able to put tables out there and everything like that on the public walkway, let's say if they have a big crowd, right?
We'll have the applicant tell us if you're proposing.
Nor is that the intention.
It's not the intention.
Not the
You have a
intention,
problem-
but is it a
You
possibility?
have a problem having a restriction of putting tables out in that area.
Our plan is that it's public use. We're not going to be serving outside of the deck area,
But the sidewalk's public use.
as is the city wall.
Okay. But in other words,
Just so that people can understand, and that the concern of Mr. McGovern is, we allow people to have outdoor dining on a sidewalk cafe. And that's utilization of a portion of at least what people would consider a public sidewalk. It's not technically, but it is. And I guess what Mr. McGovern is concerned, if he has a concern, other members have a similar concern, that we wouldn't find an application for outdoor sidewalk cafe along that seating area. If that's not the intention and the applicant has no problem having that restricted to that, that's fine. If it's not, then the applicant would have to do like anybody else, make their application and propose that. And they would have to go before the zoning office to do that. I don't know what the applicant's plans are.
I have no problem agreeing to that. We
Okay.
don't anticipate wanting tables down there.
Oh, very good. Put that in his covenant.
Anyone has, well,
Questions are not related to this.
okay. Mr. Shelnick, or?
It's not related to that.
Mr. Benisi?
Yes, I have two questions. First, with regard to the seating area, what is the proposed material?
The decking, you're saying?
The stepped seating area going down.
The seating steps is a Trex type material.
Sorry.
Trex, a composite material?
Okay, so it's not a stone, but it would be?
No,
Gotcha.
it will be framed with a composite material.
Okay. Very cool. Then, out of curiosity, I see there appears to be in some of the renderings outdoor furniture, maybe cushions, something like that. Are there provisions for during bad weather, bring that material in? Is there a place to store it, either within the building or outside of that? Be addressed?
It'll be addressed just like the pier is addressed when bad weather comes. And which is to batten down the hatches and, in this case, we're not sure of the actual process, but there's a few, they can be brought in, they can be brought under the building. So we, at this point, I don't believe they have that planned out.
You know, and this may not be a question, it isn't a question for you.
But there will be an accommodation for that.
Oh, absolutely. For bad weather.
Everybody's dressed.
Yes.
What's the overall occupancy, and is it different for summer and winter?
Well, the seating on the inside of the building, I believe, I'll give you the correct number. Sorry. The inside, we have approximately 200 seats. On the outside, we're looking at about 223.
Any other questions from Mr. Summerfeld? Okay. Unless that's more testimony.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may call John Hillis.
John Halis, P-A-L-U-S, Principal of Dynamic Engineering in Como, licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. Testified before over 125 various planning boards and zoning boards throughout the state.
Thank you, John. We accept your
Thank you. I'm going to swap out these exhibits. Put my exhibits real quick. A7 simply illustrates the an aerial of the overall property. North would be to the top of the page. Shark River 35 is to the east of our property. Our property is delineated by a white rectangle. It's all borough land. It's the Fisherman Den's currently there, which is a small mercantile building. You have further to the north, you have all the commercial boats. And then we have the marina a little bit further to the south. Jump right to Exhibit A9. Orientation is a little bit different. North is to the right of the page, so west would be to the top, and to the bottom of the page is going to be to the east, which is also Route 35. Orientation on the site, very similar to the prior application, although from an engineering perspective, there's some substantial improvements, in my opinion. Access to Route 35 stays the same. We have an egress further to the south, ingress on the north side with a little bit of a landscaped island between, with some additional parking. You have some additional features, the underground storage tanks, the borough fuel dispensing, all remains the same. There's no modification to that. The biggest change probably, outside the building getting a little bit small and the reorientation of the outdoor seating area, is the elimination of what was the service aisle. The prior application had the retail component on the south side of the property, a service aisle that wrapped up going in a counterclockwise or clockwise fashion, and then the restaurant building further to the north, which created a little bit of a tunnel effect, especially when you look at the height of the building and the height of the finished floor of the prior application. I know when we were here, there were some concerns raised about that. We ended up losing some additional parking on the east side of the building. This revised layout eliminates that. What it does actually, by shifting the retail component, the public access closer to the commercial fishing boats, I think there's a dramatic improvement on that end. We maintain access on the east side of the building, which would be two-way, north-south, and then we also maintain the same traffic flow on the east side on the north side of the building, it's similar to what you have there today. It's oriented a little bit better. We have 90-degree parking, so we can pick up some additional parking. The traffic flow, we do also have a little bit of a drop-off area toward the pier before you would access toward that loading area for the fishing boats. And then another component is we have a nice little drop-off area for the restaurant where we didn't have that before. And that's going to be beneficial for an ADA drop-off, or also if at some point, because of the parking situation, maybe we went to valet or any of those situations. So there's a little bit of a private drop-off area. Overall, the building is 6,679 square feet less than the prior application. From the parking perspective, which, again, as I recall, and I'm a resident as well, parking is always an issue, especially at the marina. The prior application, when we took we took a snapshot, a limited development, which was an area we were looking at. The prior application had the same number of parking spaces delineated as on our application as what was there under existing conditions. Granted, I testified last time, I know some people can park illegally or shift around, but what was delineated on site, there was no change in the overall parking essentially for the marina. This changes a little bit differently, and actually in this layout, we are now increasing the number of stalls by 10, so that's 10 additional stalls. Plus, when you look at the parking demand, the way the ordinance is written, you take the greater of either the floor area or the number of seating. In this case, it actually, floor area is the greater parking demand. Because of the smaller building, we decreased the parking demand by 130 spaces. So there's a net gain technically of 140 spaces from what the prior application that this board approved, which I think is a dramatic improvement. The building elevations, Mr. Sonfeld testified that we have actually moved the building out of the VE zone, which allows us to drop the finished floor by approximately a foot, also by eliminating that service area bypass along the east side of the building facing 35. We can actually get the grade elevation roughly about 9.5. The prior application was substantially lower. On the south side, we're at 7.5, which is about a foot higher than what we had on the prior one. So when you look at it from an ADA accessibility, this is a home run. The building's a foot lower, plus now from here, you're actually at the handicap ramp on the southeast corner of the building, you're at 10. So the ramp itself only has to go up 3 foot, where I think the prior application we were closer to 6. This is stairs here, so the handicap accessibility is not as much of an issue, although we do have a ramp off of the drop-off area, if you will. The grade area located off of the public pedestrian access stays the same, and then we also have for the public areas as well. Impervious coverage, there's a net decrease in impervious of 698 square feet. So again, the additional landscaped areas that we've been able to provide throughout, some nice foundation plantings facing toward Route 35 on the east side of the building. We've got some additional shade trees here on the north side, which were not a part of the application. Nice island between the 2 rows of parking. Nice landscape feature at the northwest corner surrounding the fire pit area, and then creating a nice visual buffer from the public area to private seating area, the deck area. Just to clarify again that the public sitting steps, which is it's a public feature. It's not part of the restaurant. There will be no service from the restaurant to that area. That is strictly for the public, people who are walking past, walking through the marina, or maybe even headed to the pier.
And they don't need to be patrons of the restaurant, obviously.
No, they do not. One of the other things to hit on, I know we were talking about the scale of the building and the magnitude. The prior building, for reference purposes, I'll say that the water elevation is roughly 0. That was going to be approximately, let me just double check my math real quick. It's going to be about 93, 94 feet above it. So when you're coming actually over the bridge, you would actually be looking up at that feature. This building is going to be substantially smaller, so as you come down, it's more in scale with your view as you're coming down. It's not going to block out the rest of the marina, the water views as well. So I think from a scaling standpoint, that's one thing to consider. We also shifted the refuse enclosure that was located on the south side. Because of that service aisle, we've been able to push that further to the north with a private hauler there, away from what essentially would be the 10th Ave entrance, which is going to be the primary entrance.
Can you show me where that is?
It's designated here, it's a sand color, different concrete color up there. It's aligned with the drive aisle for pickup.
Loading, unloading zone?
There's no designated loading zone. One of the things we discussed and looked at is obviously we could provide a loading zone. We could designate a loading zone that's going to result in a loss of parking spaces. This use, the primary deliveries are going to be mid-morning when the commercial fishing boats are going to be at their fullest, which means that all of the prime parking here is going to be taken by the commercial fishing. So what you have people who are long-term parking, if you will. So they're going to be parked there. So the box trucks, the alcohol trucks, essentially we envision they're just going to simply stage on the east side of the building, and then they would load. The service areas are located directly there on the east side of the building. They would just wheel it in at that point.
How are they gonna get there? How's your traffic flow projection? Are they gonna be able to make it through that entrance ramp, that entry way there, or are you gonna come in from the?
They would be coming in from the other side, from the north.
Come under the,
Yes.
under the bridge?
Correct.
How are they gonna get out there?
They would come out, they would actually make the right here with the open radius. And then there's a very wide throat here at the southwest corner of the building.
That island that you have there for drop-off is not in the way?
No, because the throat you have here on the west side is fairly substantial. I can scale that for you if you want. So when it makes that turn, it has ample room for the radius. You have approximately 31, 32 feet, which is fairly substantial.
With that island there?
Stalls.
No, that's to the back of the stalls. That doesn't
That's
include the
the back,
stalls,
yeah, sorry.
the back of the stalls. And we could submit, a plan to your engineer for review if you'd like. That's not a problem.
I'm just having trouble with moving the tractor trailer because I can see them getting in the way you're having to get in, but I don't see them getting out.
Predominantly, you're looking at side panel trucks, box trucks. Those can be the primary delivery vehicles. There will be infrequent tractor trailer.
The frequency of tractor trailers delivering to the establishments that are currently in Belmar is quite significant. A lot of deliveries are made by tractor trailer.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it takes up a lot of space and it creates a lot of confusion, a lot of traffic flow problems. That's why I'm expressing that concern.
I mean, if you want to eliminate the number of parking spaces, we could designate a loading area. There's no problem with that. Being familiar with the marina, I think for the short time that you have a tractor trailer making deliveries here, I think we're better suited to having the parking spaces. It does function a lot of downtown areas. Right here, trucks stage. Sometimes for a short period it's tight, but it works.
I'm gonna take your word for it. From what I'm seeing here, I don't see a tractor trailer making that right-hand turn, going around that island and then making the left-hand turn to get out. And I presume they might not even be able to make the complete left to go out the other end, and might have to go all the way down to L Street to get out. Like box trucks are no problem, vans are no problem. Tractor trailers, I just don't see it, I don't know if we have anybody expert to know how much space they really take to make the turn.
I can submit something to your engineer if you'd like.
Yeah. And what size vehicle would that be, WD-40?
Most likely. Most likely.
Okay. And then you'll provide a charting template to demonstrate to my office's satisfaction that the WD-40 can navigate that turn.
Go ahead.
Okay, just briefly, you indicated that, I guess the net decrease in the impervious coverage is from the prior approval, not from what's presently existing.
That's correct. There is an increase overall in impervious from existing conditions to this application. I was just referencing the prior approval.
And again, you may have testified to it, I may have just been taking notes. From, say, the grade on the front facade, or Route 35, your elevation there, how high up from there to the finished floor?
So, obviously, it's changing.
I know your grade changes because you drain to the, obviously it's lower.
Average, we're about 9.5 foot,
9.5 foot.
and then we're going up to 13.3.
And so that underneath that structure, there could be storage space for, say, something like tables in bad weather.
I would think so. At this point, we haven't really
Haven't designed
considered that, but that's certainly something that you could.
A 9-foot ceiling height and then 34 or 6 on top.
Right.
Thank you.
John, any testimony?
If you could just comment on utilities.
So, certainly, so one of obviously the driving factors here is the utilities on site. When we first looked at the overall project, we kind of got in, there's some utilities there. I've done a lot of commercial development. Moving utility poles can be a little bit tough. But once we started dealing with utility companies after we kind of got involved with the whole process, very complicated. The amount of utilities that are actually in this marina is unbelievable. So we started looking at that. Utility companies, weren't very helpful, kind of saying, we're not going to move these utilities, which is a surprise for most utility companies. So what we actually did is we kind of went back to the drawing board, and if we were to go through the process of the prior application, we would have to essentially shut down almost the entire marina, communications and power. But what this application does is we've created this kind of boxed in gravel area, which we have electric panels that are out there today. We have the transformer and the switch are all there to remain as is. And then we have a couple transformers at the northeast corner which can remain as is. Those were areas that were prior buildings, we were utilizing that space, but we've essentially kind of built around it because of the extensive nature of what's there. There's some limited utility movement underground, but not the major utilities that we had. And that's, obviously, nobody at the commercial portion wants to be shut down from a power standpoint for any amount of time.
So this amended plan addresses the concerns
Of the utility companies, absolutely.
and also the other users of the road.
Yes.
Is there someone who's going to address signage or proposed signage at various locations at the site? Now you have something on the one elevation, on the west elevation.
Yeah, I think essentially, we were looking at compliant signage. It was going to comply with the ordinance. So the name of the restaurant hasn't been finalized at this point, but you would have a sign facing due east toward 35, and then you'd have really two small signs on the north and south facades facing those parking areas. And then there was also boxed out a small, whatever the retail that the borough will maintain. However the borough wants to handle that, I guess it would be up to the borough, I'm not sure.
Okay, so there's no variance sought for the signage?
No,
No variance is being sought.
with the
This
application.
application.
Yes, quick question regarding the refuse area.
Yes.
Material would be wall, and also delivery for pickup schedule, frequency, et cetera. You have the access, discuss that.
It's a masonry trash enclosure. The pickup, the frequency.
Masonry, will that be like match something or just a standard?
It would probably be like a split face block that would match the color of the composite siding.
Okay.
Any other questions about the board?
I have a question, I don't know who the right witness would be to answer it, but we had, I know it was brought up in the last application about music and noise and everything. Now, last time I think we were talking about that it was contained inside the building. Would it be conflicting with Pier 9 activity that goes on with the outdoor music? So now you have a lot of outdoor seating. What's that going to do for the noise and music?
Our plan is to have music.
Officer Cooper, CEO.
Yeah, President Chefs International. We currently have music until 10 o'clock on the pier. It is our vision to have music start inside the building here when that music stops. We won't have music going on simultaneously, and we will not have music on the deck. That'll be going on the pier.
But with the doors that open to make the in, the out, and vice versa, I mean, it will be like it's outside, right? That's my concern, you're gonna have all those doors open, and even if the music is on the inside,
That would be at a certain hour.
the music will
You
be.
know, we would
being
actually
attended.
start the music later in the evening, but we would adhere to any local noise ordinances. If they have to be closed to play the music, then we'll close the doors. But, you know, we don't anticipate that it's gonna be the type of music that is gonna be carrying across town. And it is gonna be facing to the south.
Any music that's inside is not designed to attract patrons outside, correct? That music is being supplied by pier, those enjoying the outside portion.
Well, there'll be at different times, so those people that are on the pier that wanna hear music, when it shuts off here, we hope that they come here afterwards to listen to the music at say 10 o'clock.
That, once again, though, that's inside.
That is.
In other words, what you're doing inside that restaurant, the basis for doing that is not to provide music to the outside. You have that, you have music provided to outside patrons at the pier.
Correct. We're not gonna have competing bands.
Right.
It'll go till 10 o'clock, we're here. Now, if it's a rainy day and I have a band hired to play outside, maybe I'll bring them in and bring them inside for the entire time. And they would turn over at 10 o'clock. We currently do that at our restaurant, Tom's River.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Cooper. Your original application, you said you plan to employ about 100 people. Do you have any revised figures for this?
That hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed, to be the same one?
Mhm.
At the time of the original application, I think negotiations were going on, at least according to the testimony at the time, about the lease arrangement and the payment of a fee. I think it was in the neighborhood of $300,000. Has that been covered?
Yes.
That was paid last year, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Well, all of this is based on, first of all, the applicant is going to be governed by the terms of the lease arrangement, the lease agreement, I should say, the developer's agreement, and any borough ordinances.
Is there a developer's agreement in place now?
Yes.
There is. I anticipate that the developer's agreement would set forth whatever rate structure it was between the municipalities. But I can get you a copy of the developer's agreement.
I reviewed it this morning here at Borough Hall. I'm familiar with what it is.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
What was the seating capacity of the old restaurant? Just trying to figure out,
The same, right?
Lost tables or gaming tables?
It's definitely, there was more inside than
Yeah,
outside.
I understand that.
The net, no
But
change.
she made a comment before that we're gaining parking spaces, and I thought it was about the same, so I'm kind of lost on that.
On the parking space, why the demand
Yes.
increased? Because the way the ordinance is written, most ordinances actually are written for a restaurant are based strictly on seats. The way the borough ordinance is written is based on square footage or seats, whichever is greater. In this case, because of the square footage, it essentially ignores seating. It goes strictly by the square footage. So when you take the older building that's much larger, you have a very high parking, there's very large parking demand. Now, even though you have the same amount of seats, it's not necessarily logical, but based on the ordinance, it decreases the parking demand.
But in reality, you really can't.
It's the same number of seats.
Mr. Cooper, you may recall at your original presentation, you're having the same number of employees at the time. You talked about having employees possibly park up in Belmar Plaza. You recall that?
Yes.
And I raised objections to that, saying plaza was there for other businesses. Do you have any plans for employee parking that have changed since the original application?
No, we don't. And we will encourage our employees and hopefully along with the boats, commercial fishing boats, to get all of our employees to park further away from the building. Along the railroad tracks, a lot of them park. But we have not developed a plan on where employees will park or any type of shuttle system.
Since it's a lot of outdoor seating now, probably most folks will be biking right back and forth. I know that there's like, by Pier 9, you have a couple of, I don't know, if the town that put them there, or you guys put them there, for the bikes. What's the plan for over here outside of people just putting the bikes by where those benches are? You know, most people are going to be on those.
Are you gonna provide bike rides?
Yeah, basically, yeah, like, and where would it go? I mean, where would they go?
It would probably just be an extension of where they are.
By Pier 9?
Because you also have an entrance right here, so it's close. That way, you could park here, go here, then you go inside, come back out.
A lot of people use this area along here to park their bikes.
Right, but that's, and they're filled, they're full with just Pier 9, so now you're just putting another 200 seats.
Well, I think, I don't know that it's full. I think that there's a lot of area that they can put them in. And we hope that there's a lot of bikes.
I seem to recall some discussion the first time around about this being more of an upscale restaurant as compared to what Pier 9 is. And what I'm seeing here and hearing here by the various conversations, this is just an extension of Pier 9. Bar and grill. You get kind of getting away. It seems to me like you're getting away from what I thought the original intent this location was going to be. Is that a false impression I'm getting, or what do you?
Well, everybody's definition of upscale is different. Pier 9, or 9th Avenue Pier, is fast casual service. We're doing everything out of a trailer. This restaurant is always meant to be very similar to our Water Street operation, which has steaks, full seafood dinners, but it also has brick oven pizzas, burgers, wings, appetizers. So it's a big restaurant, and it's going to be reasonably priced, and we're hoping to attract a wide variety of people to come to this restaurant, keep it full. It's not going to be a white tablecloth restaurant. It never will be. It wouldn't make it. So it's going to be a upscale look, but it's going to be a very approachable menu. And I don't know, I think that originally we provided a menu to give you an idea. I didn't bring one with me tonight.
And when you say Water Street, that's the establishment you have in Tom Shore,
Yes.
which, like this, is on the water and is a year-round.
It's very similar. Water Street is almost the exact same size building, and it has an outdoor feature to it. It's a very busy restaurant in downtown Knott's River. A lot of similarities to what we're doing here.
Oh, that's
Just to remind the applicant that in your original approval, one of the aspects of the approval and finding the fact that the applicant will encourage wait staff to utilize parking in public areas, public parking lots across the railroad tracks on 10th Avenue, and will consider developing the site with bicycle racks. I'm not hearing is there a backing off of that concession, or?
I don't have any problem providing bicycle racks, but, you know, we could put bicycle racks here, we can maybe put them over here, but this is where people are gonna park their bikes. It's just the way they do it. If you had bike racks here, they're still gonna park their bike here. And we're, you know, a lot of others are, but if you'd like me to provide some bike racks, we'd be happy to do so.
Could we provide some additional bike racks in that area?
In what area?
In the area where they park the bikes now? Is there room for like another bike rack?
Yeah, I don't think there's any bike racks there now, they're just tying them off the fence. So they're all, yeah, we would be happy to provide a couple more bike racks.
I would think, I mean, in the summertime, if you have inside and outside dining, you're gonna have 423 people, possible.
Hope so.
We got enough bikes and they can park in a parking space.
The applicant had also, during the last round of approvals, had agreed to provide details for pavers to demonstrate how they will match and coordinate with existing pavers. But does anything, I guess what I'm trying to find out is, how many of the conditions before have we satisfied, and or are there any deviations from the prior conditions? Because it would be probably the board's intent. I want to make sure I'm not locking you into something that you haven't thought through, but it would be, if you didn't mention it here, and it's still applicable, all of those other conditions still exist. Just want to make sure you're satisfied with that. That's usually what the board would do on the amended site plan. To the extent it hasn't been addressed here, we request that you comply with the original conditions. I don't know where you are on some of the satisfaction of those conditions. If as a result of design, everything had to sort of be backstepped, I guess things like those other conditions you're going to see in your approval, are you comfortable with that so you're not coming back for an amendment to the amendment?
As I recall, with the last design, all of this area here was pavers. Now it's decking. Are we adding pavers, John, that I'm not?
I don't think so. I mean, there's a strip here that.
There had been an issue with pavers before when you were trying to communicate with the retail on the south side. Obviously now that's greatly eliminated, so that wouldn't be applicable. I guess what I'm also leading back to is sort of the aesthetic view that the board had and some explanation as to why it has been, I guess, toned down from lack, again, my understanding of the characterization of the board was, is there still a consideration of maybe enhancing the site aesthetics to make it more appealing along the lines of what you had before, recognizing that you don't have the elevation that you were dealing with before. Well, we are going to have a lot of ramps. You know, there's going to be, to the extent, I guess my point from what I'm hearing from the board members, obviously you've got some ramps on the front, you've got some ramps on the sides, and those types of things. It's hard to make those wildly dramatic, but to the extent that you can pep up the rest of the building, from what I'm hearing, is there any consideration of revisiting colors on the facade?
Yes, we would revisit colors on the side. One of the things we did when we realized that we were going to carve this area out for the utilities was we hired Tom Bauer, Malolo Bauer. And Tom, if you could speak as to what you did instead of pavers. Because you mentioned pavers.
I'll allow Mr.
Is that okay?
I'll allow your counsel to when he, fine.
Okay, that's fine. We'll bring Tom up.
Sure. Just to make sure we're not missing anything, we've already, represented before there are no variances being sought.
There are two waivers. One was environmental impact statement. Based on the fact that we submitted, we have a traffic permit. We asked for a waiver, which was granted last time. And then the second one is meets and bounds restriction. Thank you. Because we're only looking at a portion of the overall borough property, we requested a waiver. This is all but just a fragment of the overall marina. So rather than go through expensive, have to serve the overall marina, we requested a waiver, which was granted last time as well.
Mr. Barry, been sworn in?
I have been, yes, yes, sir.
You're a landscape architect.
Yes, my name is Tom Bauer, principal in landscape architecture firm of Malolo and Bauer Associates. Our office is located in L'Oreal. I'm a licensed landscape architect.
Thank you, sir.
Obviously, you've
Sure.
been involved in the this project, and you made some landscaping additions.
We have.
Describe
Sure.
to the
So
board.
I'll say a few words. I think both Greg and John have made a nice presentation, kind of stole some of my thunder here this evening. But I will tell you that our role here was to really study, when we say use the term landscaping, a lot of people think of plant material. I think of outdoor spaces and outdoor rooms that people can utilize. Obviously, we've got a lot of patrons here who are utilizing the restaurant. Our goal was to create an outdoor space that is complementary to the indoor restaurant, so that there could be a smooth flow of patrons from inside and out. You've heard testimony about the number of tables and chairs on the outside. What we've created through these graphics, through the design, is a series of levels, taking advantage of that grade change from the pedestrian walkway up to the new finished floor. We've enhanced that so that there are several levels, which are very desirable to the public when you're sitting and dining and looking out over this great river and a beautiful sunset. When I first met Bob, he told me there is no greater sunset than there is from this location. I think he's right. I had an opportunity, and I'm sure all of you folks have as well, to dine on Pier 9 and look at that sunset. Well, I think there is no greater theater to see that sunset than there will be from this deck now, and then from these multi-levels. And we've structured it so that we can dine at one level and look over some folks dining at a lower level. We've got sitting steps for the public, as you heard testimony about, that is entirely for public. But we've also got some sitting steps for our patrons as well. We've got, you saw tables and chairs in the one image. You saw some lounge furniture was discussed, informal, casual sofas and soft chairs with cushions and things like that, so you can sit and have a drink or eat a pizza, that kind of thing. So it goes from the higher end dining indoors to that same kind of dining outside, in addition to the casual nature of the sitting and relaxing. It's just a terrific space. We've enhanced that with some beautiful furnishings, tables and chairs, colorful umbrellas. There are 2 outdoor bars, as Greg explained to you. Those areas are terrific, and they're at different levels, all accessible, as you heard. We've got 2 great outdoor fire pits. I don't think enough has been mentioned about these spaces. These are wonderful. We envision them with numerous fire pits in each one of these areas, sand primarily as the ground plane surface, soft furniture and casual relaxation around those areas, properly screened. There are 2 control points, I should mention, to the entire deck, one of which is right in this location. And control is important for bouncers and things of that nature. So there's a control point here, so anyone coming to or from that outdoor deck must pass this location. That's where the ramp is, and that's where you access the fire pit area, as well as the bar and the dining area. The other area is on the far side, on the south side. So there are 2 control points to the deck for obvious reasons. So I think, and then in addition to that, we've got some trellises outside of the garage doors. There's a canopy over the bar. This has a roof structure over the bar to the south side. Really terrific spaces, they really are. The material, most likely a composite lumber. I think that's what everybody's using. It's what we used on, obviously, your Belmar boardwalk that we were involved with in the design of. And the railings, I think, are great. We're talking about hopefully cable-type railings, so it's very open and visible. We've created at the top of the public seating area a low planter with ornamental grasses that would suffice in lieu of a rail or a wall to define that public space from the private space and still allow visibility to the waterfront and the sunset that I spoke about over top of it. So we've taken into consideration a mix of spaces in terms of size and area and relationship to each other. We've taken into consideration the view and the importance of that view. And I think this is going to be perhaps the greatest dining area that I can tell you of in the Jersey Shore area. I really see this as being incredibly popular and just a stunning outdoor dining area for all of our patrons. Mark?
Any
questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kuchar, would you like an opportunity to address Major's report since you're here?
referring to the January 9th letter.
That's marked as PB 2.
Skipping essentially to page 4, under site plan, item 1 is essentially information. Item 2, the existing utilities are to remain as I testified. 3, I think, has been addressed in testimony. Item 4, during construction, I think obviously we'll work with the borough engineer. I might zip real quick. I believe under the majority of the construction, what we would do is we would stage here on the east side, allowing full access here while we did construction of the building. And then what we would do is we would finish this for access, so then you would be able to have access on the north, east, south sides while we did construction on the west side. So essentially you will be able to maintain access from north to south. As far as the borough engineer wants, that area would be fenced off for protection. Access to 35 would be maintained at all times. Item 5, the fuel monitoring system. The system on the tanks themselves remain as is. Essentially, the panels themselves are going to be relocated. That really would come down to the borough in terms of public works, or I'm not sure who maintains it, where they would want that. Most logically, it's going to be in the new retail building or the borough office building. But all that is the monitoring system itself. No comment. 7, I believe I addressed the on-site circulation. The step seating area, there is a 1-foot differential in those areas. That's kind of more of a public area, and that's the intention. So that it's not a regular stair, it's more of a seat, like a sitting area that you see in a lot of public parks now. I think 9 was testified to. As far as pavers, I don't think we're introducing any more pavers, but if we do introduce any pavers, obviously we would ensure that they would match those that are out in the public sidewalk. 11 is the lighting. I believe that we testified that for security purposes, certain lights would be designated as security lights. It would probably be 24 hours, but it would tie in directly with the borough lighting as well, which is present.
We provided that in details in the instructions.
Yes. No comment on item 12. 13 is agreed, which is the borough ordinance, the governor brought up. The trash removal is private hauler, and 15 is just the landscape, which you heard testimony on. Yes. And then we would obtain any and all other permits as necessary.
We comply.
Yes.
Can the applicant address what outstanding permits are still required? Other than the ones in the borough, just any other outside agency?
The soil conservation district and county, I believe we have soil conservation district, and I'd have to double check on the county was a waiver, I believe.
Okay.
Mr. Benita, anything?
That satisfies my concerns for that.
Okay. Any other questions by the board?
Just for clarification purposes, once this building is completed, is it at that point in time it becomes borough property, and then you lease it back from the borough? Is that my understanding?
The property itself is.
I'm talking about the building, the structure. Once it's completed, it becomes the property of the borough, and you lease it back from the borough on an annual basis, or?
My partner, Mr. Jackson, is involved in that.
I'm John Jackson, I'm also an attorney for Checks. The lease is very complicated, the developer's agreement is very complicated. It's hard to define it as owned by the borough or owned by the applicant. The terms of the agreement provide that the borough is to oversee all of the construction. The borough is to have its inspectors in there, more so than you normally would on just a construction project. They'll have an oversight as an owner, so they'll look at the materials, the construction methods, et cetera. The way the lease is designed is at the end of the term, the building goes back over to the borough, or if there's a default. So it's hard to say who owns it and who doesn't. It will be collateral on loans and things like that, but ultimately the borough owns the land underneath it, and under the event of any default, the landlord, the borough also has control as a landlord to make sure that it's insured, that the premises are properly managed, et cetera. So, I'm sorry for the complicated answer, but that's basically the parameters of it.
And the term is?
Well, there are several extensions. It's a total of 50 years.
First term is
24 years is the first term.
So if you go out of business in year 6, she becomes a borough.
Yes, if there's a default under many terms, including if it's a nuisance or it's improperly managed, it'll go back.
Yeah, God forbid.
Well, that's,
Not ready to retire yet.
Mr. Forte, as a planning board member, I'm going to allow you the question.
I have some questions. You reduced the size of the building by a certain percentage. Is there any intent or thought about reducing your lease to the borough because you reduced the size of the building?
well, that's why we had to go in front of the borough. You'll recall this is a two-step process. And our argument when we went before the council, what our presentation was, that this is a more fitting product, it's more the appropriate scale, it has a greater likelihood for success. We think the amenities have been designed, and we had to go in front of the council, and the council had to approve us under the terms of the developer's agreement and under the lease, which they did unanimously. And it was my impression that they were warmly embraced this. That doesn't usurp the authority of the planning board. We have to come here too. But the borough, as the other end of the contract and as the overseer of this, has endorsed this.
Do you have any, because you reduced the size of your building, do you have any intent to reduce the size of the lease?
No, we have to pay the same amount of the lease.
Couple other questions.
That's a good idea if you want to.
I know, what was the width of your building, the actual structure? What was the actual width of the building on the 35, Route 35 side? Previously, that was approved in March of 2014.
Yeah.
And what is the width that you propose now?
I believe you have to ask the engineer or the architect. Mr. Carroll is looking at that now.
I don't have the drawing at scale, but it is staggered. It was two separate buildings. So the old building was much larger, but it has a gap in the middle for the service aisle.
So this will be smaller, the actual
This is smaller.
visual to 35, Route 35 will be
Yes.
small?
Our engineer may have that response.
What is,
Second, the applicant.
what is your completion date? What do you shoot for an opening date? Anticipate approving, assuming this gets approved.
We will begin construction September 2015 and hope to be open by June of 2016.
And months of operation for the indoor operation and the outdoor?
12 months a year.
For both?
Well, we wouldn't be open on the outside today, but it's seasonal, depending, if you get a nice day in March, part of it may be open.
I would say that that's going to be, if I could, just slightly disagree. Probably that it largely, as to the outdoor dining areas, will be something that the zoning officer will have to designate. Generally, there's a limited term for the outdoor dining for those periods of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Anisi, did you have?
Anything else?
Did you have, just in clarity, Mr. Kelly, did you have the footprint of the main structural walls?
I do. According to what I was able to find, the main structure was 166 feet long, whereas the new building, its longest, is approximately 185 feet, excluding the little bump out for the entry area. So it's the new building is going to be wider? 19 feet wider. However, the old building was a total of 210 feet when you took into account the 20-foot opening as well as the 24-foot wide tenant space. So there was an additional 44 feet that extended beyond the main building, if you will. So it's 210 versus 185.
Okay. All right, any other questions by the board? Mr. Kitrick, any other testimony by your during the summer? Okay. At this point, we're going to open it up to the public. If anyone would like to provide comment, please step up to the microphone, provide your name and address for the record.
Comments or questions?
Both.
Okay.
Victoria Renner.
That might work.
Pardon me?
It probably does not project, and I don't even know if that's recording, so I just ask you to keep your voice up. I know you're not vulture.
A lot of things were brought up which I wanted to address from the board. And one of them was that I spoke from outside because I wasn't here for the previous applications or the things that were approved or submitted. And there was a very big difference aesthetically from the building before to now. So questions to them would be, you know, I mentioned to them as a woman, if we were buying a house and we picked out a house and it was 2 stories high and it had this certain design, and it cost $11 million and you can only spend $7 million, so would you get the same house but a smaller version of that house? What we've been presented with tonight is a completely new application, and I came here tonight because I was concerned. It is a long-term structure for our community. It is something when you come over the bridge, it's one of the first things you will see. And after speaking to them, I get the design, I get, you know, certain things are, there's all different looks, I guess, you know, it can work, it's something that can work. Part of me also wanted to know, you said, is there a way to enhance what's already, what has been presented tonight? Because it's drastic from the last one, I guess, and everybody seemed to be very happy with the last design. As the outdoor dining ordinance, which we said does not apply, however, I'm surprised, really. I had a commercial property, came to this board, and I had maybe a 12 by 12 area, and I had to give you every name of every plant and exactly how many were going in that little 12 by 12 area. Here you have a beautiful landscape design, but has everything been listed and presented of exactly what you're getting?
Sorry, we did have, I did read it into the record before, and I don't know if the applicant, although Mr. Bauer has addressed it, but the part of the application this evening, it includes a complete plan schedule. It is marked as A4, which delineates number, variety, common name, height.
Because none of those, that was not brought up at all to the public tonight.
It wasn't to the extent that the board had it before, and I would submit that unless they had a question, they weren't going to address it. But
Okay.
there is a complete landscape plan that appears to address exactly what it is. I can make it, take it back with you if you'd like.
No, I
A little while.
understand.
Just
And
get back
so
with it.
one of the questions was that aisle to the south end, which I believe was borough property, is borough property. Is that included in their design? They said there would be shade trees and things that were planted there. So is that part of their landscape design, or is that the borough's?
I'll let the applicant speak to it. I do see a notation that the existing plant there is to remain, does not appear to have any additional plantings to the aisle to the south. If we're talking about the same one, it looks like a dog bone there.
Right.
Good.
That's north.
That's to the north.
Good north.
To the south.
To the
Good.
south.
There's no shade trees proposed there now.
Okay, because it was mentioned shade trees were going someplace, but I had no idea.
That was the north side.
North side. Okay. The loading zone was brought up. I think it's important to consider deliveries on our Ocean Avenue years ago, like a Dunkin' Donuts, a trailer tractor comes up 16th Avenue. How they're going to get there with all the deliveries. Years ago on the planning board, we would have almost set times of delivery to, keep track of it so that it's not at all times if there isn't a designated zone. there's a lot of other things, let me just see. The other thing is samples. When I first looked at this rendering down here and saw the idea of it, that's just, it's not what you're getting down there. You're getting what the renderings that show the facades of all north, south, east, west. But we've discussed a driftwood type of, and color was brought up. You have no idea what color this is as a sample. You have no idea what the sign looks like, which will be facing Route 35. I don't want to say it's incomplete to me, but the details of what normally must be seen as a planning board to approve don't seem to be here. I don't see, you don't know the name of the place, but yet is it a wooden sign? Is it a neon sign? We have no idea what it is. On 3 signs, actually, that are going up. The facade, which we described as a driftwood, a different version of what was said last time. Everybody's version of driftwood is different. I don't know. I don't think I have a clear.
I don't believe the testimony is true.
What color is
Just
it?
let the applicant, is speaking.
Yeah, okay, whatever it would be, we don't call it driftwood. I don't know what color it is because there's no sample here tonight. We need to see what it is. The landscaping outside, I think, is beautiful. I think, they did a great job with that. I had mentioned to them, somebody brought up the bike racks, which I do agree is a beach town. Everybody does go under the bridge, they ride their bikes there, and they do chain them all to the railing, which is their property. So if you're going to increase this with, I think there's 223 people, 423 people inside, and 100 employees, it's 523 people that will be filling this area. As far as the shuttle that was brought up, it was vague. There was no decision on a shuttle. Years ago, when the boathouse, which is a very small place, we had asked them to designate parking in a lot, an empty lot that they had leased for employees. Because I think what people don't want as the town develops is for parking to come into Cross Main Street and take up where homes are. Because we don't have a parking garage, which was never built, and we only have X amount of spaces, and you have boats that are used down there allowed, especially in the summer, charter boats that go out to take up spaces. So there are a lot of things, details in my mind, that I think need to be added or crush, dot your I's, cross your T's type of thing. I had asked them as far as, we have the trees, we have that, but as far as color and foliage, you don't have a color of the umbrellas. You have no idea what the chairs look like. And yet on an outdoor dining ordinance, we make the person bring the chair, the exact umbrella, the exact garbage dispensers, the exact light fixtures. I don't know what it's.
Nor do we, because we don't have jurisdiction over that.
Okay, so you don't have a
But
design.
but the applicant, if I could, just on that point, to Reggie's point, the applicant, if they decide as to those areas that are outside,
Oh, no, I'm not talking about outside.
I'm talking about the
I'm talking
umbrellas.
what they have proposed here.
That's outside.
Oh, I thought you were talking outside their space, like where they're.
No, I'm talking on their deck areas, to the extent that they're going to serve food and patrons out there, that will fall under the outdoor, under the dining and eating areas, and they're going to have to make submissions. All of those conditions that used to come before the board go before the zoning officer at this point, based upon the ordinance change. So they're going to, and they've already acknowledged that they have to do that. That was also addressed in the engineer's points, and the applicant has agreed to do that. And just on one of the points that you know, in the last application, the applicant agreed and has not retreated from that in this presentation, that any signage, even though that they're not requesting any variances, which they confirmed again this evening, any signage has to come before the sign committee and can't be placed until the sign committee agrees and approves it.
Okay. And I understand that. I understand that we have a sign committee and all those things. I think I would have liked to have seen, since you're approving a very big project, for you all to have a vision of your final, what it will look like, a sign, coloration. And I even said, I know I'm always the one that sat there for 20 years and asked for flowers, but in between that, is there garden type coloration? Are there baskets along the, what do you call it, the railings that you're looking out to the ocean? I think if you had, or can ask to see if things would be planted along the railings there for more coloration, it would be beautiful. I mean, this is your opportunity to really, we're having somebody develop a very big project, and we want them to succeed, but we also want Belmar to know they did the right thing and watched every detail to make sure it was the best you could get from the application that's being presented. Somebody else had mentioned something about the east side, I guess it would be, that it faces Route 35. But I didn't really hear any of you suggest what you would want it to have to make it different, so that they could, you guys could negotiate and say, we would like to see this, and they would say that we can do that. But no one really gave them what you would want. Did you want shutters? Did you want different lighting? Did you want a fountain of some type of nautical thing, since we're going for this? There's a lot of things the board could suggest to applicants, and sometimes they consider it to put it in to enhance the property. I think that's it. I just would like I said, the parking, the shuttles, see what you can do to work things out if you're all going to consider approving this design that was presented tonight. I don't know if drainage also discussed it, as discussed as far as last time, because this is a different elevation, and this is, so all drainage was all, okay.
It had, there's the stormwater management.
I come down also, which I thought was a little strange, but our gas tank is there, isn't it? The fuel tank to
Yes.
fuel up our borough vehicles?
At the end of the north
Oh.
aisle that we were discussing.
So has that been,
They will, based upon what the applicant has stated, and based upon, I guess, the developers agreement they've reached with the municipality, those tanks will remain. However, the monitoring system for usage of the tanks will have some relocation into the marina office.
okay, so I guess I'm asking with the gas tanks being with this new building, is that the proper location for us to have a gas tank with 500 or so people that close? Is that where we want to keep a gas tank? Or is there a better place for the borough to move that, or, make it safe?
But the suggestion that it isn't safe now is not accepted by the board. To the extent that the marina is there at this point in time, to the extent that the tank has been there, I'm assuming there has to be some type of inspection of those. Certainly, the planning board doesn't have jurisdiction to demand the removal of that by the municipality, but we can certainly.
I'm not
Make
saying
the
that it's
comment.
not safe now, I'm saying with what we're doing, the proximity of the building and people, the amount of people next to it, is that, that's something the borough might want to consider, is that our best location for safety, for their sake, for, people sitting there dining, very close to the gas tank, which I think also happens on Pier 9, if I'm not, the place that was extended is also our gas up area. So I'm not sure if everybody is aware that, proximity to patrons, I would like to make sure that that's safe. So whichever way, like I said, whichever way you decide, obviously, it's a big decision. And I guess all I'm saying is, when I sat up there for 20 years, I think if you seem to be questioning the design, or you're not happy 100%, your heart's not saying it's 100% what you want, maybe give suggestions of what you can compromise and picture, so that everybody gets the best of both worlds, they're successful, and we get a beautiful place that people are proud is located in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie? final site plan approval.
Yes.
And to me, it sounds more like the preliminary. I just have so many questions, and since the building construction has changed dramatically, and is so inconsistent with the original plan, which I thought was beautiful, the construction, I think, Mark Kittrick, Mr. Kittrick, said a very important word when he opened up today. He said, the marina is the jewel of Belmar, and it actually is really true. When you come into town from the south and you look at our town, we're really the only town that has this amazing marina and also the luxury of the beach within such close proximity. And I think that's something, it's a tremendous asset, and I think that we should work really hard to preserve that for our residents. And the first plan, I think, represented a beautiful asset for the town. But I'm going to talk really quickly because I have a lot of things I just want to ask, and they don't have to be answered right now. I think the parking spaces are very problematic. I did not hear any real solution. I'm hearing a few suggestions, but I do think that that should be clearer so that we know what's going to happen with regard to the parking. They are saying they need 216. They are indicating that we will have 129. That's too much of a difference, and that was not even considering employee parking. I want to quickly, I don't have it in my notes here, but I do want to address the delivery situation. It was addressed with the tractor trailers coming in and the timing. But what we didn't discuss at all tonight was the retail space that's going to be inside this building and what types of retail is going to be there and what deliveries will be necessary to accommodate those businesses. So I think that that's important. And I don't even think that's known, what type of retail stores are going in there. I have an understanding now that you will be serving dinner past 10 o'clock, a full dinner. Will it be a reduced course? I don't have a clear understanding of what you're doing on the outside after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So is it going to be one of those reduced menus where possibly, you get a different clientele that are really not coming in for dinner at 10 o'clock. So what clientele are they trying to attract at 10 o'clock when the pier music shuts off and this music turns on? I also think something like that has not been discussed is the senior building. That's kind of smack in the middle of the new beer house building that is also the same type of structure and is also going to have outdoor upper dining or drinking. And now this one they will be both competing with each other outside, I think. I'm not 100% certain if you have a year-round alcohol license or at least the ability to serve alcohol, but I believe they do. So I think that should be considered, the effect of the outdoor dining. I have a tremendous concern. I probably am most concerned about the services and that they will not be upgraded in this plan. And I think that that's a big change from the last plan. The town is going to be burdened with now providing services for up to 423 people with great luck year-round, but something average or close to that for sure. And are the services that are there able, and how old are they, and can they accommodate this new rush of activity that will be our burden? And that was in the first plan, and that was great that we were getting all upgraded services, but now we're not. So we do have to consider the costs to Belmar as a result of the increased capacity of this building. I haven't really seen the plans close up. I'm not quite sure about that sand beach
part. I don't really, I haven't really been to the marina. I've been on the boats, but I can't recall that there is sand or beach there. I don't know if they're bringing that in, if that's an extension. If it's open to the public, if the public can climb up those stepping steps and go to the bar, I think the control issue there is a little bit confusing for me. Maybe I'm not looking, I couldn't quite see the visuals here, so maybe it's okay, but grass that in lieu of a wall, to me, seems less control, and I think we're probably looking for greater control to minimize our liability. Another big concern I had is this is not going to be anything prefab, or any parts of it are not going to be prefab. It's all going to be constructed on site. And I thought I heard something about a construction, a concrete wall. Is the building facade, parts of that, going to be concrete?
No, none
No
of the.
concrete.
I believe the concrete wall he was speaking of was the trash enclosure.
It's just the wall, it's not
Right.
part of the building?
It's not part of the building.
Okay, I was confused on that, thank you. And then again, the issues with the bathrooms, they're going to be bathrooms to accommodate the patrons inside the restaurant, and then
Yes,
another set of
there will be bathrooms inside, but one of the features is the outside public restroom that and one of the things as we've gone along, as we've upgraded, as we've developed, one of the decisions was to put the restrooms closer to the party boat fleet, which we thought was a better location for the public restaurants.
Those are the outdoor restrooms?
Yes, these will belong to Belmar.
That's not in lieu of indoor restrooms?
No, well, of course, there's bathrooms as shown on the plans. There's restrooms all in, throughout.
Okay. While I was, when you had mentioned that you wanted to replicate your other Baker's Water Street bar, I kind of Googled that, and I see that you have a full calendar going through the entire January, February, March year of different types of bands that are up and out and playing until 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. Is this your intention for this location as well?
It's a full-service restaurant, and I don't know what you're referring to as far as full bands playing all winter.
Well, I'm looking at your
On the weekends.
calendar.
Yes.
You have something going on.
That is our
every night,
intention. Yes, the answer is yes.
Mike?
Right.
That's our intention.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be clear, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that, I don't have a clear understanding. You'll be closing down the dining, the interior dining at 9 or 10 completely? Will people be able to sit inside to have drinks?
The thing that's difficult is Jack Baker started the La Cucina 50 years ago. A restaurant, this is a 50-year lease. It has to evolve, it has to change, it has to address the marketplace, it has to address style. So we envision changing as time goes on. So when you say, what time are you closing down outside? If it's a beautiful night in the beginning of July, when the sun sets at 9:30 at night, people will be sitting outside being served dinner later. It will depend on what the traffic bears, and what the demand is, et cetera. So it's not something you can really pin in. And what we asked the board, what we think the reason why the governing body chose Baker's, and Bob Cooper in particular, for this role, this was an open bid process, but the borough got to select just the right operator. We think that we've proven ourselves with the 9th Avenue Pier. We think that we've proven ourselves with our 50-year track record. I'll mention to the board, I mentioned it to the governing body, Mr. Cooper just received a very prestigious award from the New Jersey Restaurant Association, the Golden Plate Award. And it's a recognition of outstanding work in developing and managing restaurants. And the two that were cited in the award were the Wharf Side in Point Pleasant Beach and Water Street in Toms River. Now, I'm sure the board's familiar with them. Over the years, those restaurants have undergone a tremendous transformation. They have been continually upgraded. They are state-of-the-art. Got to drive new pylons in, the new pylons go in. You have to change the inside, change it. And We think they're thriving, successful restaurants, and we anticipate that this will be the same thing. So we ask for a little bit of latitude based upon our track record and the fact that we were selected, and also to understand that a restaurant is a very dynamic business. What's hot this year might not be hot next year. They've hired one of the top architects in the area, Mr. Sonnenfeld and his firm, an outstanding landscaping firm, outstanding engineers, and that's what they continually do with all the restaurants. Moore's Tavern, the restaurants in Florida. So we need a little bit of latitude, and we think that that makes sense, rather than, get bogged down in this, and you can't give a specific answer to a lot of this. And I hope I'm not seeming evasive, but it's also just the nature of the restaurant business.
I appreciate what you're saying, but you, the latitude that you're asking for could affect us financially on many different levels.
Which is exactly why the governing body has control as a landlord. I mean, this is not just something that like a typical application that's in front of the planning board, you like, oh, and then it's gone. The governing body also has control over this as a landlord.
And we also have liability as a landlord, and that would be my greatest concern, and you're even using that word right away, drags us into your problem, which becomes our problem, and it's a liability. So I think it's only fair that the latitude that you're given.
I think the liability that you're talking about is really, I don't want to get into discussion of the tort claims, immunities, the fact that you're a landlord and the tenant is primarily responsible, insurances and things like that. I respectfully submit, and believe me, my day job is a personal injury defense attorney. I represent insurance companies. The worry that municipalities have against liability in this type of situation it's very rare that you will ever see anything be imposed as far as liability for the operation of the tenant on the municipal property area. The board's attorney can explain there's many layers of protection for that.
I appreciate that. I wasn't exactly concerning personal liability, false slips or anything like that. I'm talking about the bigger picture, the tax implications. As I said, the burden on the services, and I really feel that that is a primary issue here tonight, is that none of the services are being upgraded with this new plan. And with the previous plan, all of them were. Upgraded transformers, upgraded cables, upgraded underground sewerage. You can only imagine that you are now having the amount of traffic with new occupancy that they're hoping for, and we're all hoping for, that this is going to be a tremendous burden on services, and we have no protection there. And sorry, I'll be done right after this. And also, I think that you really have to address the exterior and the way it looks, because I don't think it looks very attractive, especially the exterior on view from 35. The back is beautiful. It's kind of reminding me of sunsets. It's like a big steel, especially if it's going to have a steel roof. It's not going to have that appeal of someone just to drive by and let's stop in there from the outside. So I think that should be addressed as well. After 15 years, we're going to own this property, and I think we want to have a building that's constructed and will hold up to that length of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Excuse me, David Schnack, SCHNECK, 302 C Street. Just a couple of questions. One thing what I want to make is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this wasn't awarded through open public bidding, right? This was under redevelopment law?
I misspoke, yes, it's a little bit of both. It's put out, but the governing body selects the best candidate.
Right, but no other enterprise submitted a competing proposal.
There were other people who were interested in it, and.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Most of the outside of the building and much of it is going to be deck work now. Is going to be made out of a composite material, I'm not sure who would be best to answer this question, like Trex or something. Anyone know the estimated lifetime of a Trex material before it has to be replaced? Like, we have a Trex deck in our backyard that's like 15 years old, and already some of it's starting to warp and stuff. Anyone know? The Trex material that you're making the deck work out of, what's the expected
I don't know.
lifetime?
I don't know the exact lifetime, okay, but if boards warp, they're gonna replace them. I can't give you a date, I can't say 15, 12, 14 years, but it's a lot longer than your treated lumber.
So is it part of the contract that, that like after 50 years or 30 years, however long the eventuality is before, I don't know why I'm talking into this thing, I'm sorry. It's just habit, you know. But the eventuality of whenever the building is turned over to the borough, that we're not gonna first have to start replacing all these warp boards and renovating the entire place.
That's an issue that's not before this board as the planning board, but if it is, I'm assuming, maintenance of the property is something that is addressed in the developer's agreement.
Does anyone know if the I don't know who I should be talking to here, but does anyone?
Mayor and council.
Oh, okay. Does anyone know, thank you. Does anyone know if the development agreement stipulates what sort of conditions the building?
Oh, this is the planning.
Oh, I understand that, okay. So then I can't get an answer to that question here tonight, then, right? Whether there's some kind of stipulation to the condition the building's gonna be in when it's turned over to us, right?
That would be something that would be in the developer's agreement, I'm assuming, and would be a question more properly addressed to Mayor and
Okay,
council.
all right, okay, thank you. How come the second story was eliminated?
The testimony and there's a lot of reasons, initially based upon what we thought was appropriate for the site. And also the ground floor had to come down considerably to make it more accessible. I don't know if Mr. Palis or Mr. Sonnenfeld wants to address that, but it has to do with what's the scale, what's appropriate, what our experience with that site was, what our experience with other restaurants are and were, and it all just comes together, and we think that this is the best product for the site.
So originally you thought that 2 stories would be more appropriate for the site?
Well, that was the original proposal. It's hard to say how this, not hard to say, it's hard to explain briefly how this all evolved. But it was a proposal that was made, and the most important thing, I think, is the mayor and council, who's the landlord, the owner of the property, have embraced this with open arms. We think it's a more appropriate facility for that location based on our experience. It's unusual to represent a developer and say, I have approval for more, I want to make it smaller.
Well, I was at that meeting. I don't think, my impression wasn't that they accepted it enthusiastically. They accepted it, but I remember Brian McGovern saying, wow, it's a lot different than it was. I don't remember them being that enthusiastic about it.
I hope I've addressed that, so.
So you decided to, you didn't, I'm just wondering, I thought the Victorian looked pretty good, and the Victorian could have been scaled down. I'm just wondering, it seemed more appropriate for Belmar. There's a lot of Victorian buildings in Belmar, but I only know of one like rustic looking house over there by the lake, Tom Lice's house, actually. But it just doesn't look like the rest of the town, you know?
And we also had a lot of comments on that building with the 85-foot high tower. So beauty's in the eye of the beholder with that, and we think this is a better scale, better fit for the property.
And so you weren't aware of all the work that would have had to be done to the utilities the first time around when you came up with that first plan?
It all goes into the feasibility, and part of that is weighing the disruption that it would cause to others, and this let us reconfigure the drive aisle, which we think is better for pedestrian circulation. Also, one of the biggest concerns, and as we analyze this more, we actually have a net parking reduction. We've heard the explanation from Mr. Pell about that, based on the square footage, et cetera. So we just think this is.
It's not really any change in the number of parking spots. It's just.
It's a slight increase. What was
based
it,
on
like,
the square footage of the building.
10 more parking spaces, and the demand is lower based on the square footage and the way the ordinance calculates the parking.
Encouraging discussion stuff. In the outside dining area, do you intend using disposable plates and cups, or is it going to be ceramic, regular kind of plates. And
Do you want to address that, Bob? How?
We plan on
I'm just
using
concerned about-
the same plates that we're gonna use inside the building.
Which is regular, permanent, like run through the
Typical,
dishwasher,
yeah.
not disposable, right?
Correct.
Okay, good.
And that's been your experience with your outside, inside, outdoor area at the wharf side and the point, right? Is envision service similar to that?
Yeah, if you're familiar with the wharf side, you have the wharf side, the deck, and the patio bar. This would be handled more like the deck, which is the same menu as the inside of the wharf side, but different than the patio bar, which we're.
You won't be using paper plates and paper
Correct.
cups that are gonna blow around and stuff.
And your waiters and waitresses wear uniforms, they come out, and it's.
Full service
It's
restaurant.
full service restaurant. It's not, like you said, not white tablecloth, but you do have tablecloths. No, but they come out, they wear uniforms.
I was just concerned about, stuff along the way, it's windy there, and disposable plates and cups would
Right.
have
That
a
would be
tendency
the
to
case.
fly off the tables and such. Last question. One of the big selling points that Mayor Doherty pointed out last April when you were here last was, before the council asked, was that at the end of the lease period, whether it's 50 years or shorter, if you chose not to stay the full length of the lease, was that the building would become borough property. That's been discussed at length here. And it seems that this building is not going to be nearly as valuable a building as the other building was. That's my main concern tonight.
Well,
is
we
that-
think it will be, because it will have hosted a thriving and successful restaurant for the last 50 years, and we think that's going to be very attractive. If you overbuild something that's the wrong scale, the wrong product, based on Mr. Cooper's extensive lifetime experience in this industry, that'll be a white elephant and it won't be valuable.
Well,
And I
we did
point out that this is
propose that
going to,
building.
not only do you take the building after 50 years, but it's also after, what, about $20 million in rent payments? $250,000 a year? It's a substantial amount that will be paid over.
Oh, I understand that, yeah, just, apparently at some time you didn't think it was a white elephant, you liked it, proposed it,
And we
thinking of
evolved.
building it, so, but I'm just saying, it looks to me like we would have been inheriting a much more valuable
Well,
building.
we
than
think that
this.
when you look at where the emphasis is on the outdoor dining in that arena, that's a better place to emphasize and to put the activity.
Yeah, well, we might not necessarily even 50 years from now want to use that as a restaurant. We may want to use it as a community center or something like that. It doesn't have to be a restaurant.
Okay.
But it just seems to me to have been a nicer
Thank you.
building. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Kramer? Raise your hand first.
Gene Kramer, Fourth Avenue. Chairman Winters, board members, Happy New Year, good to see you. Actually, I didn't take a look at any of these plans. I responded, or I should say, I read the public notice that was in the newspaper, like it was done by Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank you.
Well crafted. I guess my next question, are you here tonight representing the borough of Belmar?
No.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking that is that, as a municipal government, we are a corporation and should be represented by council, right? Okay.
I'm the planning board attorney.
Okay. How about, is there anybody representing the borough here tonight?
No, the applicant has received permission from mayor and council to proceed with this application in much the same way as any number of property owners can give an applicant permission to seek improvements on their property.
Okay. Do you think we need protection as residents, taxpayers in this town, to be represented by council at a quasi-judicial proceeding like this?
To that extent, I serve that function as the planning board council, yes.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Good. Actually, and thank you very much for the public notice. I guess one of the questions I had was an affidavit of notice provided to the board.
That's provided to the board secretary who reviews that, and that's a matter of standard protocol. It's made certain that the notices were properly given. I think the board found that as preliminary.
Okay. I was just curious, you mentioned how large the property was here. Was it actually given for 200 feet encompassing all properties within that,
Under the municipal land use law, we get the notice based upon the four corners of the property. The tax assessor provides us with that list by statute, and that's what we notice in accordance, and that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. I noticed, as part of the notice, and one of the reasons I was asking whether you were representing the borough, you mentioned a 40:55D-31. Can you provide us with an estimate of what public funds are going to be required to complete this project?
I'm not following your question. This is going to be built by chefs, and they're the...
Right, but
they're paying for everything.
40:55D-31 pertains to public funds.
That's the general notice provision of the municipal land use law. What subsection are you referring to? You're referring to my notice that
Yes, your
notice
notice.
was given
Your notice.
in accordance with the...
He's referring to capital, review of capital projects where expenditures of public monies are made.
Right.
Okay.
What are the expenditures of public money here?
None?
So that's it? There will be no public funds
That's my
involved in this
understanding of
project?
the agreement. The contract was very detailed that the developer has to pay everything in association with the
That's
construction.
fine. That's fine. I mean, just as long as the record reads that way. But I don't want this to be construed as an approval to spend public funds, especially if the borough is not represented by its own council.
Let me do this. Even if it were, that statute would, in my humble opinion, would not apply. That statute applies that in an instance where public funds are going to be expended, and prior to the expenditure of any public funds for a capital improvement, which is specifically defined within the statute, prior to that occurring, that entity, whether it's a school board, whether it's a sewage authority, not too long ago we had a sewage authority come, and the improvements were going to be made with tax dollars, tax funds. In that instance, that entity is obliged to come before the board. Sometimes it's referred to as a courtesy review. It's not a site plan, but it's a review of their project to determine the extent of that project so that the planning board in that instance can determine what impact, if any, that has on the master plan, whether it's consistent with the master plan, whether it's consistent with the zone plan and zoning ordinances. But that's really not a site plan application. This is something, again, in my humble opinion, that's more burdensome to the applicant to proceed, particularly in light of the fact that the triggering event is not here under that statutory formula that public monies, at least to my understanding, are not being expended to make a capital project.
This was the only statute that was referenced in the notice. This was the only statute.
The statute that was noticed was 40:55-31?
Correct.
Well, that was, what the notice particularly says is that review approval is also being sought, so this is alternative relief on behalf of the borough as a review of a capital project pursuant to the statute. As you know, if you want to build a school, municipal building, the governing body can do that, the county can do that, the state can do that, school board, et cetera. Doesn't need planning board review, it comes in as a courtesy review. So to the extent that this is public property, we're looking for, to build a building on it, in an abundance of caution, as an alternative notice, I put that out there also. I don't really think it applies either, but I just wanted to make sure it's a, it's like a safe.
I understand that, but this was the only statute that was actually referenced in the notice.
Okay.
All right?
That's
fine, good enough, as long as you testify that you make representations that there's no public funds involved here.
That's my understanding. If we find out differently, then they haven't crossed all their T's.
Okay. I guess the other question I had, does Chefs International pay the SID tax in Belmar?
The what tax?
The Special Improvement
SID,
District tax?
I'm not aware of it, however, it doesn't.
Not a property owner.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Although a picture of the 9th Avenue pier was on a billboard along the turnpike, right? That was paid for with SID money. I'm just pointing that out as a fact. If you're not contributing to it, you're certainly a beneficiary of it.
I don't know, was that a general promotion for Belmar?
Okay, so there's no public funds involved. Actually, I really couldn't see it. This appears to me to be the purview of the mayor and council. I really don't see any standing here by the planning board or any authority to change, alter, or otherwise modify that. I don't think the planning board should quite truthfully waste much time with this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ma'am?
Yes, Katrina Praxis, E Street. Two questions, actually. We were talking about the deliveries that Mr. Burke brought up, and when we were talking about the 18-wheeler trucks coming in, how are they going to come in again to the site?
They would access from the north and travel south.
So they're going to make a right-hand turn into 10th Avenue, and then come in from the south end and go around that way? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
So they'd be coming from the north. They would stage here on the east side of the building,
But how are they going to get in from the north, is my point?
under the bridge.
So
So
they're
they
going to
underneath the
have
bridge.
to, they're going to have to go, they're going to have to, I'm sorry, because I'm confused about the dimensions of the thing. They're going to have to make a
You
left,
have the aerial view? You have the aerial view now?
so they're going to have to go around down Main Street and then come up 7th Avenue to access. They're going to have to turn off of 35 heading south, am I correct? Make a left. So is there a way to go on 7th, right off of that bridge on 7th Avenue?
No,
Yeah.
it would circulate, it'd probably come off Main,
Right, so we're
down
going to have
7th,
to.
and then head
Right,
south.
so we're gonna have to make a left onto 8th or that street, then you're gonna have to go up Main Street, you're gonna have to make another left onto 7th, and then you're gonna have to go underneath the bridge. That's what we're saying, right? Just with the left. Okay, thank you. That's,
Sure.
and the other thing I have a question about is, the effect on the marina people, the people who rent spaces on marina, because I happen to have friends who rent space on the marina who are very, very worried and nervous and upset and possibly not going to return to Belmar because of the amount of money they pay per square foot, which is also just increased. My question, I guess, is, you know, the complaint for them always seems to be the noise, and somebody brought it up here, I don't know. So my question is about if 10th Avenue closes at, 9th Avenue Pier closes at 10 o'clock, and all we're gonna do is just move all those people from outside over to the new building, inside and outside, because the doors will be open. What time do you close? Like the regular closing hour, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes. In general, the operations would be based upon what the ordinances are, which I think would be 2 o'clock. We'd like to, you may follow that,
Right.
but it's incumbent upon us not to create a nuisance, and if we do, we would be subject to the same punishment that anybody else would. So we have to comply with the regulations, and, that's essential to keeping the liquor license, it's essential to keeping the landlord, which is the borough, satisfied, and from keeping the police from showing up.
Okay, and is this an ABC liquor license or a seasonal liquor license?
It's a license that's issued by the director of ABC, and it is a concessionaire's license issued through the state.
Oh, so it's a concessionaire's, is that similar to what we have, like DJ's is a concessionaire's license? No, it's a regular ABC license for the
It's
state of
issued
New Jersey?
directly by the director of ABC when you're on public lands.
Oh, okay, so it's year-round? It's year-round?
No, well, it will be, yes.
Okay, I never heard of that, because I've been in the bar, my family's been in, I wasn't sure, because I thought there was 2 different kinds of
It's
licenses.
just like if you wanted a license at the Meadowlands or a state-owned property, this vehicle is available.
Okay.
And that's what the 9th Avenue Pier is under, and that's what this would be.
Right, but that's a seasonal liquor license, 9th Avenue, but that's only,
No, it's not.
oh, it's not?
No,
It's
our
only
lease
because
is-
the,
Our lease is seasonal,
oh, okay, I see.
but our liquor license could go year-round, but It's a
Okay.
seasonal lease.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you. That's what
Thank
I
you.
was- Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public portion of the meeting, and I'm going to open it up to board comments.
Sure. Quite honestly, I was leaning against the application a little bit because I was concerned about the aesthetics, Route 35. However, I want to applaud the public for generating all this discussion. And through that discussion, my concerns have been somewhat alleviated, and I'm in favor of the application.
There's a lot to recommend with the application where you reduced it, and I appreciate that, but I'm still very concerned about just the Route 35 portion of it, and I guess just the color scheme, just brown and gray roof. I just would prefer a much different, maybe a little more vibrant color scheme or something to make the Route 35 frontage be a little bit more attractive. And I understand it's the back of the building, but that's what everyone's gonna see when they're driving past it on Route 35. And I still have concerns.
I just want to do something with the applicant. Right now, it's my understanding the applicant has agreed to the following, to agree to revisit the exterior colors and facades condition of approval. They are not retreating from that aspect that required them prior, though they're not requesting variances, the applicant is not seeking any modification from this approval in the past with regard to any signage, even conforming signage, coming before your sign committee. And the applicant has agreed to place bike racks over in that section. He hasn't designated a number, but we designated as a consultation with the borough engineer for placing bike racks over in that section. And those are, let's see, I have to tell them different conditions that they are agreeing to at this point in time, and any other condition that was previously required that is unaffected by this application.
If they're agreeing to revisit the color scheme, how does that exactly work?
Generally, we have these requests that go back to TDRC for review for aesthetics. TDRC has done that. The board could, if it so desired, create an ad hoc committee. You have, I think you have a standing sign committee. You might say, this, if you want to do something more, those two things, there's absolutely no problem with having an ad hoc committee as a planning board, a specific application for the aesthetics. We have designs, again, we have design standards for the Seaport redevelopment area that are already part and parcel of that. I did not see an extensive treatment of that by the TDRC, but there's no reason why the board couldn't come back and say, look, this Victorian theme is what we'd like to see, or there's something else that you can do, and then see what the applicant can do, even from, like what Ms. River said. Give me some samples of the Trex material, what colors you use. Give me some samples of this cement board. What are you seeing? The applicant has already said to you, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to you about those things. If you wanted to see that and wanted to make that specific condition, we can certainly do that too.
I would feel more comfortable with the application if somehow we could sit down and deal with the aesthetics. Like I said, there's a lot about this application I like, but the frontage to Route 35, it's not working for me right now.
Mr. Reynolds?
You just covered exactly what I was going to say. I was in love with the other building. I could see coming over Route 35 and seeing that the tower, and this is drab. It's boxy. It has the one turret, which I like, but there's got to be more than that, and I would also like to recommend that we work with them in some kind of compromise to jazz this up and make it the jewel we want it to be and not what it is right now.
Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, the obvious about comparing the old building to the new building, to me, goes back to apples and oranges. I happen to like both. I think Greg did a good job designing the building. When he said it's a wharf-style building, that's what I say. I've been to a lot of places on the West Coast and in Florida. If I saw this on a waterfront property, I would absolutely visit it and make it a destination the same as I think it's going to be in Belmar. Is it the same? No, it's not the same, but I like both. Again, if everybody has was more comfortable with colors or something, then great. I think they said they would accommodate us. But other than that, I like the building. I like the plan. I like the way it's laid out. I do have concerns about the loading only, but not enough to block anything. I'm in favor of the application.
Mr. Kozak?
I have issues with the aesthetics on it. It's a totally different look than was proposed in the original application. So I am also, with my colleagues down here on the board, in having to come back with a different, something in the middle. I mean, this is in Point Pleasant. This is a building that already exists in Point, and we're just moving another one up to Belmar. The first original design was more Belmar. And that's what I'd like to see. Materials, a different design, closer to the original one.
Mr. Burke?
Yes. First of all, I think you did a nice job in your presentation. Simple fact of the matter is, I happen to agree with my colleagues. The land use law, one of the responsibilities of this board is to, and I'm going to read it here, this is right from the law, to provide for and promote a desirable visual environment through creative development. And I don't think we've done that here. I like the building, I like what you're going to do with it. I happen to agree with Mr. Reynolds. We like the original design. Perhaps some sort of compromise could come from that. You also stated, we're talking about parking. As you all know, when it comes to this thing, I'm going to talk about parking. You say you have a need for 130, 135 less parking spaces, yet you're employing the same number of employees and you're having the same number of patrons. That is not, I can't comprehend that. Parking is a problem. It's probably a good problem. It's a nice problem to have. If we have a parking problem, it means we're filling up our spaces and we're getting people in. It's a well-known fact that we need more, and I'm not going to shoot the project down on that basis. I think I voted for it before when we required more spaces. Another thing that was brought up, I think it's important to point out that we as a borough, we're going to be getting the same amount of rent, if you will, for a lesser building. So, the question or the concern that was raised about, are we getting, a true value? I think it's probably offset somewhat by that. I checked into that today, and we're going to still get the same amount, and it's going to be, a 3% increase over the first 5 years, and there's a sliding scale so that after 20 years or so, the borough will have taken in something like $8 million on the project and still conceivably own the building. So, I'm comfortable with that aspect of it. It all gets down to the aesthetics, and it's a big concern.
Mr. McGovern?
I'm very confident that Chefs International, as a restaurant business, is going to do an excellent job here in Belmar based on the last 3 years at 9th Avenue and their restaurant in Point Pleasant, Wharfside, and in Toms River. So I'm not worried about the restaurant end of it. They'll do very, very well. They'll do what's best for Belmar. Again, I think the aesthetics from the Highway 35 side of the building has to become more interesting. People driving by, that's what people are going to see. You got to say, hey, that's a neat looking building, that's a cool building, I want to go there. The way it's presented right now on the Highway 35, I'm really not that happy with it. That first building, can't hold your feet to the fire on that. It's too expensive, can't force you to build it, don't want to see a smaller one. I just would like to see it more interesting from the Highway 35 side. And the parking, on days that you know it's going to be very crowded down there, you just got to be very organized. Perhaps have some type of a valet parking and utilize some of the areas where, let's say, the boat trailers are during the day that aren't there at night. Use that as parking with valet people. But it's a good project.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes. You had a difficult problem with the utilities that you ran into, and I think you have a good solution for that. But I too are concerned about the aesthetics, and would hope that you'd be able to work out with the borough the something, as we could say, more interesting from the highway side, and it's a building that will be nice to look at. Now, I know it's not coming close to what you had before, but one that's interesting.
I wish this application that you're presenting here tonight was proposed to us back when you gave us the original application, back in March or April, whenever it was. As planning board members, we vote on a lot of things up here that people are going to be living with for the next 50 to 100 years, long after we're gone. When I left that meeting last March or April, like I said, I was very happy to be part of all that. I thought this is a beautiful design that people are going to love for the next 50 years or so. Not that this new application can't be that. I'm strongly in favor of this ad hoc committee to work with you to create these amenities that I think we have to see. I'm really concerned with what everyone else said about the appearance of Highway 35. From a business point of view, I would think that you want that to be attractive. When someone's going down Highway 35, either going north or going south, you want them to look at that and say, hey, that's an interesting looking place, let's pull in there. So that's my recommendation. I mean, I'm in favor of the application, provided we have this ad hoc committee to work with you on these amenities. Mr. Kovacs, could you please summarize for us? Or you want to address that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the indulgence on here. I just want to, I don't want to get turned down because of aesthetics. If I understand that the consensus of the board, you'll put this to a committee, PDRC, or members of the planning board, and we'll have amendments to the front elevation, colors, et cetera, materials, and that's really, an approval will be subject to the approval of that committee.
Those will be conditions to your approval that you'll have to satisfy.
We'll have to satisfy that committee board with.
And as we did in the past,
Yeah.
you'll see that language in your resolution before we memorialize that, and then you can adjust your timetable.
We would be very pleased to do that, and we'll work on the colors, the aesthetics. I'm sure Mr. Sonnenfeld can put some.
He can't wait to get his hands on it. Believe me, tell that.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for that indulgence.
Thank you.
Friendly resolution, this is preliminary and final site plan approval for proposed permitted use in the Belmar Marina in the public use overlay zone. The applicant has specifically requested, I'd like board members to address this in their approvals, that they be given a waiver from submitting an environmental impact statement, as well as providing a meets and bounds description. I won't belabor this record any longer than the hour as to what their rationale was for asking for those waivers, but I will indicate that they were granted in the past, and there's no objection by the engineer. Conditions of approval to be satisfied by the applicant prior to the receipt of any building permits would be that they would submit for the engineer's approval adequate documentation for the engineer to determine if the appropriate turn radiuses, radii can be met with regard to trailer traffic in that area. The applicant has also agreed that he will work with committee designated by the board to discuss the aesthetics, including samples for the decking material, samples, final coloration, review modifications for coloration, for the exterior facade of the building. The applicant has also agreed, and it's not retreated from, any other conditions of approval that were in the previous approval will carry forward. And as they did in that application, despite the fact that they did not assign variances for signage, the applicant has agreed to submit that type of signage is being proposed for the facility since it's for approval by the board prior to placement. The applicant has also agreed that it will review the placement of bike racks, actually off-site of its property, but in the area of the marina, and we're going to follow the fire consultation with municipal officials. Placement of appropriate bike racks to have bike traffic accommodated there. The applicant is not retreating from that portion of its previous application where it discussed it to review high traffic areas for parking, including valet and individuals encouraging all of the conditions. Unless there's something else from the applicant at this point, that would be a request for approval. And yes, though, it's an approval, now I ask that you address the waiver issue.
Motion to move the
Offer.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Meyer? Yes, and I approve the waiver.
Thank you.
Yes, I approve of the waiver.
Yes, I approve the waivers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, with the waivers.
Yes, with waivers.
Yes.
Motion approved.